Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are going to strip away all the comforts of our modern world and dive right into how humanity managed to conquer one of the most dangerous, unpredictable places on Earth. We're talking about the open ocean and the incredible evolution of lighthouses. So, how exactly did ships survive before GPS? It's a pretty compelling question, right? Long before anyone had even conceptualized radar or digital mapping, humanity had to figure out how to navigate some truly terrifying realities. Just picture this for a second. You are out there navigating the vast, pitch-black ocean in the dead of night. A heavy, blinding fog rolls in, you have absolutely no modern radar, no satellites pinging your exact coordinates, and literally no technology to guide you. You're entirely at the mercy of the elements, relying strictly on your own senses just to keep your vessel afloat. And we aren't just talking about a few bad hours of darkness here. Sailors in antiquity frequently traveled for grueling weeks without ever catching a single glimpse of land. The sheer isolation they faced is honestly kind of hard for us to comprehend today. They were dealing with a severe, daily life-or-death survival challenge. When you're out on the open water for that long, desperately trying to get your cargo and your crew home intact, the lack of any navigational safety net was just a massive hurdle. But crazy enough, the open water was just one part of the problem. Approaching the shore was actually often the deadliest part of the entire journey. At night, or during violent storms and heavy fog, it was incredibly easy for ships to just completely lose their way. With zero visibility, vessels would frequently crash right into jagged rocks hidden just beneath the waves. This was a devastating and incredibly common occurrence. People desperately needed a reliable way to guide these ships safely home. So the goal for our ancestors was simple: guide the ships safely to port. The very first prototype they came up with? Massive coastal bonfires set up on high hills and cliffs. Now at first, this seems like a totally logical step. Coastal communities would light these giant fires, and because they were elevated, they could be seen from miles away, right? It gave sailors a visual heads up to identify the perilous coastline before it was too late. Well, like any version 1 of a new idea, there were some major flaws. The big takeaway here is why these bonfires ultimately failed as a permanent solution. First off, they were unbelievably difficult to maintain. Keeping a massive fire burning all night, every single night, requires a crazy amount of wood and constant human labor. But second, and definitely more importantly, they were often completely invisible in bad weather, which is literally the exact moment sailors needed them the most. As global trade expanded and more ships crossed the seas, this unreliable prototype just wasn't cutting it anymore. They needed a real upgrade, and fast. Let's fast forward in our timeline to see how this builds into a major historical breakthrough. We arrive at the 3rd century BCE, which is a massive defining moment in the history of navigation and engineering. The location? Alexandria, Egypt. Right here is where one of the world's first truly great lighthouses was built, known as the Lighthouse of Alexandria. This thing was an absolute marvel of ancient engineering. It stood over 100 meters tall. To put that into perspective, that is roughly the height of a modern 30-story skyscraper. It instantly became one of the tallest human-made structures in the entire ancient world. It wasn't just a functional tool, it was a towering, literal monument to human problem-solving. And the genius behind its design perfectly illustrates why it was so incredibly successful. It featured this brilliant, dual-functioning engineering that worked around the clock. During the day, its exterior, which was made of bright white stone, acted as a huge visual marker. It reflected the harsh sunlight so brightly it could be seen for miles. But at night, a massive fire burned at the very top. And the best part, they didn't just rely on the raw flame like those old cliffside bonfires. They used highly polished mirrors to catch that firelight and project it significantly farther out across the dark sea. The impact of this structure was just staggering. The Lighthouse of Alexandria successfully guided thousands of ships safely into its bustling harbor. It was such an undeniable, resounding success that it didn't just solve a local problem, it actually sparked a global movement. This single architectural achievement inspired other civilizations all over the world to start building their own towering navigational guides along their most dangerous coastlines. But technology never just stands still. Over the centuries, dedicated engineers kept iterating and improving on these lighthouse designs, completely driven by that exact same initial goal: saving lives. They started in antiquity with those massive, resource-heavy wood fires. Fast forward a few centuries, and they upgraded to more manageable, consistent oil lamps. Then came a huge leap forward during the industrial era with the invention of powerful lenses. And eventually, we hit the modern era, where electricity just completely revolutionized the whole system. Let's actually zoom in on those last two advancements for a second, because this is where the tech truly became a lifesaver on a mass scale. By replacing standard flickering flames with highly engineered, powerful lenses, think of the famous Fresnel lens, lighthouses were suddenly able to take scattered ambient light and focus it into these intensely bright, concentrated beams. Once electricity was thrown into the mix, these beams became even brighter and vastly more reliable. They could slice right through heavy fog and darkness, remaining clearly visible for many, many kilometers out to sea. So, where does that leave us today? Well, we've experienced what we can call the modern pivot. As trade and tech evolved, navigation obviously evolved right along with it. Today, ships rely almost entirely on digital satellites, GPS, and super advanced onboard systems to chart their paths. But despite this digital revolution, lighthouses haven't just vanished. They still proudly stand along coastlines all around the world. While their practical day-to-day necessity has definitely shifted, they continue to guide sailors, essentially serving as these powerful, enduring symbols of safety and resilience. And I think that brings us to the real emotional core of this explainer. When you strip away the bright white stone, the polished mirrors, the giant lenses, and the electric grids, every single lighthouse began with one incredibly simple, profoundly human idea: lighting the way home for those lost at sea. At its heart, it's a story of human beings looking out into the terrifying dark and deciding to build a light to protect each other. So, as we wrap up our journey through the evolution of the lighthouse, I want to leave you with something to ponder. We've seen how a desperate need for survival transformed into an iconic global symbol. As our own technology continues to advance at lightning speed, what modern safety marvels of today do you think will stand as those same comforting, enduring symbols for generations, centuries from now? It is really fascinating to think about what our era's version of the lighthouse will be. Thanks for exploring this with me today, and keep asking those big questions.